And Senator Amy Klobuchar is gaining momentum following her performance in last week's Democratic presidential debate. In the 24 hours following the debate, Klobuchar raked in more than $1 million in campaign donations. The Minnesota senator then completed a whirlwind 30-hour tour of New Hampshire, and now she's making her way through 11 counties in Iowa.
Our Caitlin Huey-Burns caught up with Klobuchar in Des Moines. That's where the two discussed the differences between Klobuchar's campaign and Democratic frontrunner Elizabeth Warren's. Here is some of that interview.
She has good support, and my support is growing. And I think what I've seen is there are people that are tired of the noise and nonsense and the extremes, and they're looking for someone who has their back. And they have a home with me because I believe my ideas are better ideas. They're different ideas, but they're better ideas. For instance, I don't want to trash Obamacare. I want to build on it with a nonprofit public option that would bring prices down. I think we should get 1- and 2-year degrees free, and then we should make it much easier to go to 4-year college by doubling the number of Pell Grants and doubling the amount. That's what I want to do. Her view is different. I just don't think we should be paying for college for rich kids and off of the taxpayers of this country. And I also don't think we should kick 149 million people off their current health insurance. That is a big difference. And Democratic voters are going to have to look at their two plans and decide what they like better. And they're also going to have to figure out, and this is key for me, who they think can actually lead this ticket. I am from the middle of the country. It is not flyover country. I am the one that has won consistently in red districts, in suburban districts, in purple districts, and I've done it every single time I've run, including getting a number of Trump voters. And I don't think anyone else on that stage could make that case.
All right, joining us now from Des Moines, Iowa, with the latest on the 2020 presidential race is Caitlin Huey-Burns. So, Caitlin, Senator Klobuchar is banking on her standing as a moderate to get her over the finish line, as a Midwesterner, as somebody who is nice. But right now, there are two very progressive lawmakers at the top of the ticket. You've got Senator Elizabeth Warren, obviously, at the very top. You've also got Mayor Pete, who's actually doing quite better than Bernie Sanders, but Bernie Sanders is in the top 4. Does Klobuchar have the right strategy here, or do you expect her campaign to be shifting maybe perhaps further left to maintain that momentum?
Right. Amy Klobuchar is very much campaigning as kind of the senator next door, especially in a place like Iowa, where she literally lives across the border. She's been here. She's had over 100 events here in Iowa and is really banking on this kind of moderate appeal. I don't think you're going to see her shift to the left because of this primary. Actually, I think she's trying to find her spot in this primary as the more moderate candidate, as someone that she says talks more about practical things rather than big policy plans. She's been taking swipes at Elizabeth Warren, who, along with Joe Biden, is leading here in Iowa. Now, this could be a big bet, and we've been wondering kind of what evidence she sees on the ground that supports her case for a more moderate appeal, given that Elizabeth Warren has been consistently rising, especially in a place like Iowa. And at various stops throughout the weekend here, and when we followed her, especially yesterday, she noted that debate performance that she had in Columbus last week. She raised $1 million in about 36 hours after that debate, and she says that that's evidence that people are at least interested in her message. And we did talk to voters at her campaign events yesterday who were still open-minded. They liked what she had to say. They also liked what Mayor Pete Buttigieg had to say, who's also trying to compete in that moderate lane. The Klobuchar campaign argues, though, that they've been occupying that space since the beginning of the campaign.
So you also spoke to Senator Klobuchar's husband. His name is John Bessler. You talked about, what it's like to be campaigning as a family. Let's listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
What has it been like? I mean, you guys are on the campaign trail together on this bus tour. You have a daughter who is not here right now, but what has it been like to kind of have your family on the road with you?
Well, it's been, first of all, we've been doing this for a while, from way back when she was a little kid. And I think for me, it's been really important that she's had her own life, which is what she's doing right now. And so, you've got to have a mix of it. So her whole life isn't about being a senator's kid. And she's done really well for herself. She really has a lot of friends and is happy, and so that's a great thing. And then he and the two of them, when I'd be campaigning, would always pair up and
hang out a lot together.
Okay, I hope you got a little bit more out of John Bessler there. She basically
She
answered the
dominated that
question.
conversation.
Yeah, we did.
So what did he say about, having a wife that's running for president? Was this part of what he expected life would bring him?
Yeah, this is a little of an impromptu interview that we had yesterday with the couple. Their first actually is a sit down during this campaign. He happened to be on the bus, so we just said, hey, can you come over and chat with us? And, he's a lawyer and a professor, not in politics at all, which is what I find so fascinating about these potential first husbands. You have 3 women competing in the top tier, at least, for the nomination. You also have Pete Buttigieg, of course, who would make history as the first gay president, and his husband has been out on the campaign trail a lot. Compare this to 2016 when you had Bill Clinton. He was in politics, obviously, forever. These husbands are not in politics, and they're kind of trying to find their groove on the campaign trail. Yesterday at a Amy Klobuchar event, her husband was bringing out chairs for people to sit on and very much kind of playing a behind-the-scenes role, but very much there for his wife. He said they never really expected to be in this position, even though she's been in politics for a really long time. They have a 24-year-old daughter who's not with them on the trail this week, but they are trying to, make that balance, and it would be something pretty extraordinary for him, he said.
So, Caitlin, I also want to ask you about Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders on Saturday, of course, less than a month after he suffered that heart attack. But let's focus on the endorsement and its timing when it comes to the Sanders campaign. I sometimes wonder, I know that they had 25,000 people that attended a rally today, this weekend in New York City, but to the point that Senator Klobuchar is making, how much does AOC's endorsement or her policies or what she hopes to accomplish in Congress matter to folks in Iowa, in Illinois, in Ohio, in Florida? I sometimes wonder if she's more of a New York-centric lawmaker that has a rock star following on social media, but that may not necessarily translate to anything substantial when it comes to this national election.
Well, I think in a Democratic primary right now, this gives the Bernie Sanders campaign a needed boost, really, and kind of an extra credential that he is back on the trail, not only recovered from this heart attack, the campaign says, but also has the support of where kind of the energy in the party is right now around Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who kind of represents the fresher face of the party, the younger generation. She's the youngest woman elected to Congress, and also her support of him instead of someone like Elizabeth Warren shows that kind of the base that was with him in 2016 could still be there now. Because remember, we've been talking about whether that base would wander over to Senator Warren. And, when you talk to Bernie Sanders supporters, they're still very much behind him, even as some consider other candidates. So I think this was an important credential at this moment in time to give that senator the boost that he needed at this stage.
So I want to ask you about Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. She made an announcement about a future announcement at a town hall meeting, and that made news, right? It was that at some point in the coming weeks, she will be releasing her Medicare for All proposal, including how she's going to pay for it. So I thought it was really something that there was nothing committed. There was no real commitment there.
Right.
At some point, of course, some point in the coming weeks, you're going to let us know more about this. But I also thought it was interesting that she said they were still fine tuning it, considering it's kind of like the centerpiece of her campaign here. So, what do you make of the timing of this announcement of the announcement? Because she's taken a lot of criticism.
Right.
Her competitors are saying, "Yeah, that sounds great, but how are you going to pay for this?"
Yeah, and I think that certainly that pressure point was building, and this is a reaction to that. Because a few weeks ago at one of the presidential debates, I asked her, you have a plan for everything. When is your health care plan coming? And she cited Bernie Sanders' plan and didn't really express a need at that point to have her own take on this issue. But now she's facing pressure from the other candidates, especially Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg, who are asking, how are you going to actually pay for it? Remember, those are the candidates who are trying to stress the more practical skeptical moderate appeal. So she says she's going to release a pay for in the next couple of, or very soon. They're fine tuning it. I will say that my fellow reporter Zach Hudak and I were at Warren's event last night here in Des Moines, and we asked a couple people that were there whether they cared about this, and their reaction was that they understood kind of where she was coming from when she talks about costs versus taxes. But you can see the other candidates really putting that pressure on, and it's something that she has not yet had an adequate a response for, at least in debates.
So, Caitlin, no doubt you've seen this, a new poll from Suffolk University and USA Today, which has found that South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg jumped 7 percentage points in Iowa since June. There are clearly some who are attributing this to a bounce from the debate, but I'm very curious, as we look to Iowa, and it's still a couple of months away, but now you've got essentially Warren and Biden at the very top. You've got Buttigieg at 3, and Senator Sanders is down at 4. One of those 4 candidates is not going to do well in Iowa. In other words, it will be the top 3, and one of those candidates will be 4th, and that will mean something significant. What does this tell you about his rise?
Yeah, that was a really interesting assessment about this point in time. Certainly, they feel like the Buttigieg campaign feels like they had a good debate. I will say here in Iowa, as we're talking to voters, you ask them who they're considering. Some have a top choice already, but others will say, well, I've narrowed it down to about 3 or 4 candidates. So someone at Amy Klobuchar's event yesterday told me that he will make the decision pretty close to game time, which is February, about 100 days from now. So this race still, some of these campaigns argue is fluid, but we are starting to see a top tier emerge. Someone like Pete Buttigieg is kind of banking on the same ideas as Amy Klobuchar, being from the Midwest, having that appeal here. What we find all the time on the ground is that voters often try to imagine how other voters will participate or how they will vote. So you'll hear a lot of people excited about one candidate, but say, I like them, but I don't know if they can actually win. So you have kind of this projective electorate, if you will, that I think kind of has an influence here. And all of these campaigns are trying to really hunker down this fall to kind of gain momentum. So that's why you have just this week alone, today, Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris are both in Iowa. Joe Biden is coming later this week, as Bernie Sanders. And of course, Amy Klobuchar was here over the weekend along with some other candidates. So it really feels like game time here in Iowa.
All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns for us in Des Moines, Iowa. Thanks, Caitlin.